Starfield is finally here. Shout out to 2017 What Culture and us reporting on it way back then, because Starfield was leaked by 4chan. I guess they're right 1 in every 5 million times. But Starfield's been a long time coming, one of the most anticipated games in recent memory, one of the most anticipated RPGs of all time, and the first time Bethesda's done a new IP in about 20 years. Myself, Josh Brown, are absolutely loving it. You can go subscribe to the What Culture Gaming podcast for many thoughts over there on the game. But as I explore this game, I'm about 20 hours in so far, which I know is scratching the surface for a game that I'm going to be playing for the next 10, 20 years in itself. I still wanted to share the various tips, tricks, and things that I've come across because this game is gargantuan and there's tons to talk about. This is a major return to form for Bethesda, arguably the most straight up impressive game of the year from a technical standpoint, and something I'm only just scratching the surface of. Still, because this game is so huge, I guarantee we'll be sharing information and secrets for years to come. I'm Scott from WhatCulture.com, and this is Starfield 13 tips and tricks the game doesn't tell you. Number 13, hold A to pick up and throw items. This is a standard Bethesda thing, going back however long you want to go back through their catalog, but there's a lot more uses for picking up items in Starfield than there ever have been before. Holding A lets you manipulate any physics object in the world. You can move bodies out the way of other enemies if you're playing stealthily, or better yet, grab a fire extinguisher off the wall during a firefight, hit X to throw it towards your enemy, and shoot it to disorientate them. You can also pick up explosive canisters and throw various other items for distractions as well. So keep those things in mind when you're exploring bases or figuring out different ways to get through combat encounters. Number 12, hit LB again in the cell menu to access ship inventory. Starfield's UI kinda sucks. It's the major thing that a lot of people are just kind of looking at and going, how the hell do I even comprehend using this thing? But it does get there. It does click over time, even if it takes a whole bunch of hours and some Stockholm syndroming to get there. Just going to include this here because although there are perks and character paths relating to trade routes and using your ship for direct storage, when selling to any merchant, hit LB again after first going into the sell screen to bring up your ship's inventory and sell from there. You can store 400 units in your ship's storage, accessed through a terminal on the wall behind the pilot's chair, as well as storing items on companions, though you'll have to get everything back off them, as for now, there's not a sell from companions option. Another thing is that you can send items from yourself back to your ship as long as you're still within a 250 meter radius. Go into your ship inventory, then back into your inventory, and you can send items to your ship for later, just like in No Man's Sky. And it's worth saying that the chest in your room back at the lodge also has infinite storage space, so you can never really run out. Number 11, use weapons to unlock blast doors. Seen here from Mr. Rebs over on X or Twitter. It's Twitter, isn't it? It's Twitter. It's over on X though, by Mr. Rebs, blasting open a blast door by shooting the locks around it. I never realized that you could just use random weapons to get into formerly locked places. Our own Josh Brown confirmed it as well. It's not just the mining laser seen in this footage, but you can use various other weapons, assumedly that do ballistic damage, to blast through various locks. Number 10, upgrade the weightlifting perk for more carry capacity. You can find this in the physical part of the skills menu because Lord knows Bethesda have doubled down on over-encumbrance. I feel like I've spent the majority of my 20 hours so far just being weighed down with the game telling me in the top right of the screen that I'm over-encumbered over and over and over again. I guess I kind of champion them sticking to their roots, just going, no, over-encumbrance is a thing that Bethesda games do and we're just going to have that. In fact, they made it more of a gameplay mechanic. They made it more of a thing that you can spec towards in this game. If you go over to the physical tab and pick the weightlifting perk, you'll then be able to upgrade your carry capacity directly. One of the coolest things here, which ties into the way that skills unlock in Starfield, is that you put a point into the likes of weightlifting and then it gives you a challenge, a marker out of 10, something else to do that then ranks up the perk as you go. In this case, you have to run around with 75% or more capacity in general, which completely ties in with just how much stuff you're going to be hoarding and carrying anyway. It's always worth triggering one of these perks in the background as you explore in general to make sure that your carry capacity goes up the more you explore. Number 9, you can steal one of the best suits of armor in the game at the very beginning. Find me a more Bethesda AF scenario than this. Shout out to Patrick Macker over on X for finding this thing, because if you go into the basement of the lodge is the HQ where Constellation sets you up at the beginning of the game, but you can go through a couple of double doors down into the basement itself, you can find a suit of armor that's behind a master lock. It's very clear that this belonged to a certain figure, maybe Sebastian Banks, who founded the lodge itself, or Constellation, but this is something that you can completely bypass by angling the camera to the point where you can still interact with the suit itself and not the lock. If you get the angle just right, you can thief that thing right through the gap in the glass. It's Bethesda AF, I absolutely love it, and I hope they never patch this. Number 8, you can lean and shoot around cover. This is the same as was in Fallout 4 or the mighty Medal of Honor Airborne. Yes, I'm shouting that game out because I loved its cover system. But if you crouch behind a piece of cover, if you go behind a certain corner, any part of the environment where your character is forced to hold their gun up close, let's say you're facing a wall or something, you can then hit the left trigger to lean back out or lean up above cover to trade fire with enemies. It's one of the best ways to engage enemies overall rather than going face to face, and it just makes the shooting a lot stronger overall. It reminds me a lot of 2000s military shooters, your Rainbow Sixes, your Ghost Recons, where you're sort of playing the angles game, waiting for heads to pop back up from behind cover from the enemies, and just picking off those shots, making sure that you're maximizing your angles as you progress through various locations. Number 7, the faster fast travel method. A super quick one, but one of the easiest ways to accept how much you won't be taking off and landing on each individual planet is to lean into how much fast travel and instantaneous access there is to every mission marker in the game. Literally hit pause and hit X to bring up your next destination immediately. Or if you don't have anything selected, the game will suggest the next logical mission to do. Hit X again, as you'll then have the option to grab jump on screen, and Adam Cole, boom, you're at the start of your next task. That's an AW reference. Five people, five of you will know what that means. The boom, yeah, good. Number 6, why you don't need a city map. Yes, I'd still prefer one, and yes, it sucks not knowing where a dedicated merchant is until after you've found one and remembered, but the LB scanner view does put a path on the floor to whatever you've got selected. Honestly, I came to love this over time. I'm always wishing for more games to have less HUD elements, and I absolutely love the way that Dead Space always did wayfinding or waypointing, that you can just pick something off a menu or just hit a button and have the path be on the floor to where you want to go. I think in Starfield's case, it only plays towards it as an overall positive, because then you can enjoy the journey getting there rather than just the destination. You can even turn off various markers in the options anyway and just take in this entirely HUD-less world, only hitting LB to bring up your scanner and then see where you need to walk afterwards. It's one of the best ways to drink in the whole game. Also, it's worth throwing in here that underneath New Atlantis is a whole area called The Well, and if you're looking for somewhere to offload gear, you're looking for a dedicated merchant because you're over-encumbered or because you just want to offload a bunch of stuff, it's the best place to go early in the game is to go to The Well. It's somewhere that is barely talked about on New Atlantis for thematic and story-based reasons. It's kind of the original colony that settled there before New Atlantis was built on top of it, but you can take an elevator from New Atlantis' subway down into The Well. It looks like the place from Demolition Man that Dennis Leary was in, but you can trade a whole bunch of stuff down there if you just want to make some money. Number 5, how to compare looted weapons without taking them. Another UI qualm, but hitting X on dead bodies brings up the transfer window rather than the loot one, meaning that you can see whether or not a given weapon or piece of loot is actually better for you or not. It saves looting, comparing in the inventory, becoming over-encumbered, and ditching things later by a considerable amount. It's also worth saying that although you can equip enemy weapons by targeting bodies, aim at the weapon directly and hold A instead, and you'll equip it right away. It's perfect for clutch firefights where you're running around scrabbling for stuff just to return fire. Number 4, remove stolen and contraband markers from loot. Now, I'm playing a pretty goody two-shoes character at the minute, going for the whole wholesome captain, trying to solve everyone's problems type thing, but I can confirm from the rapscallion nature of the Josh Brown Empire that you can have stolen and contraband labels attached to loot removed if you trade it to the trade authority and then buy it back again. This might get patched going forward as it's doing the rounds as an exploit, but other merchants can give you better prices, so get going while the getting's good. It's also worth noting that stolen items are different to contraband that will get flagged by certain police authorities depending on which system you're in, but both can be made sellable through this exploit, provided you don't get caught first. Josh also passes on that if you get caught for even one contraband item, the authorities will take all your stolen gear too. So although stolen stuff is more okay and doesn't get flagged on the scanners, if you have just one contraband thing in your inventory and everything goes, they just take everything all at once. He lost thousands, he tells me, just before I recorded this. Number 3, ship combat tips. Starfield's ship combat is like No Man's Sky meets Rebel Galaxy, and depending on how you've built your ship, that weight statistic is really going to affect turning radius and evasion. However, there are 2 universal truths. Hold down on the left stick to completely drain your engine and you'll turn a lot faster, and that hitting L3 to boost is how you ditch a missile lock. One of the only cool things about Rise of Skywalker was that 180 spin that Poe did in the X-Wing, and you can totally do it here. I'll also throw in that holding up or down on the D-pad banks all your remaining energy points into whatever category you're selecting. So if you want to drain energy weapons and go max ballistic to cripple a ship's engine, you can do that on the fly, or max out shields while you're back on the defensive. All of this does take time to get used to. It's kind of weird micromanaging energy levels and all these different things on the D-pad just with your left hand as you're trying to engage other enemies, you're trying to evade, etc. But I do like the overall difficulty curve to ship-based combat in Starfield. It is worth investing the time in that if you want to be a really good space pirate. Number 2, you can completely reset your character. Starfield's character creator is one of the best Bethesda have ever made, and for what I think is a first in a Bethesda game, you can completely change your look after the intro. All you need to do is find one of the enhanced facilities that various characters mention, including your mum if you chose to have a mum in the game. But all you need to do is go to the enhanced facility, pay the 500 credits, and you can respec your character from scratch as if you were starting all over again, kind of like how Saints Row did it, RIP. And number 1, do the first United Colonies mission for some essential backstory. Starfield's opening few hours can be rough. There are a lot of characters and a lot of text coming at you, but not much in the way of actual grounding in the universe. Because of that, I'd suggest doing at least the first United Colonies mission through Tuala that you meet while you're out with Sarah at the very beginning. This walks you through a museum that explains the last few hundred years of lore that I'd say is essential to understanding what New Atlantis as a city even is, who you're shooting at across all of the missions, and what the wider threat to the galaxy could be. You can discover so much of Starfield in a variety of orders, and I didn't do the museum mission until a good, 8 hours or something in. I had various bits of lore, various bits of story that then slotted together and made sense on the other side. So I did get the full picture eventually, but I do think it's worth doing the first United Colonies mission just to start out on a better foot. You can discover these things in various orders, and each major faction has their own perspective on the events of the fiction. But overall, it's much better to seek this out than keep literally flying blind, only doing Constellation missions. So those have been various tips and tricks for Starfield, at least so far. Like I said, I'm only about 20 hours in, and I guarantee there are thousands of more secrets and things to talk about as we all collectively go on this journey together. I absolutely love the energy in gaming right now with the amount of positive Starfield stuff, and oh my god, we always loved Bethesda type stuff doing the rounds. I feel like this is a return to form. I'm loving the comparisons to Skyrim in space that it's getting, and I just can't get enough of Starfield. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. I've been Scott from ourculture.com. And I'll catch you soon.